Goliath's appearance was nothing short of terrifying. Standing at over 9 feet tall, he seemed like a mountain of muscle and armor, casting a shadow that must have felt oppressive to anyone who dared to face him. His bronze helmet gleamed in the sunlight, reflecting his imposing stature, while the coat of scale armor he wore looked like it could withstand the fiercest of blows. Weighing over 125 pounds, this suit of armor made Goliath appear invincible, a living fortress. As he marched onto the battlefield, the sound of his heavy armor clanking must have echoed like thunder, announcing his arrival with a terrifying rhythm. But it wasn't just his armor that made him a figure of fear. He carried a massive spear, its tip likely sharp enough to pierce the strongest shield. A shield bearer walked beside him, further emphasizing the giant's overwhelming presence. This was a warrior unlike any other, a figure that seemed to mock the very idea of human limits. Goliath wasn't just a man, he was a symbol of power, a living testament to the strength of his people. His challenge was simple. Who among the Israelites had the courage to face him? His appearance alone was a prelude to the arrogance that would follow. Goliath's challenge rang out across the battlefield, his voice booming like the roar of a lion. With his towering frame and armor glistening in the sun, he didn't just stand as a warrior, he stood as a symbol of domination. His words echoed in the hearts of the Israelites, striking fear into their very souls. "Choose a man," he taunted. "Let him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your servants. But if I defeat him, you will serve us." The terms of the challenge were simple but loaded with high stakes. A single battle, one-on-one, to decide the fate of 2 nations. It was an offer that seemed impossible to refuse, yet to accept it felt like certain defeat. Israel, with its smaller and less armored soldiers, had no match for this giant of a man. Goliath's confidence dripped with irony. He believed that no one, not even the bravest warrior, could stand against him. But in his arrogance, he overlooked something vital. The true strength of Israel wasn't in its size or weapons, but in its faith. The Israelites, terrified, stood frozen, their hearts gripped by a powerful mix of dread and disbelief. For 40 days, Goliath's challenge hung in the air like an ominous storm cloud. Yet no one dared to take it up. The tension was palpable. Something had to give. David's arrival on the battlefield was almost an afterthought. A young shepherd, hardly more than a boy, was sent by his father to deliver food to his older brothers, who were stationed at the front lines of the Israelite army. As he approached the camp, he could feel the tension in the air, thick with fear and uncertainty. But it wasn't until he reached the front lines that David's eyes were opened to the full scale of the crisis. There, standing tall in the midst of the trembling soldiers, was Goliath, mocking Israel, taunting God. His voice boomed like thunder, daring anyone to face him. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. The giant's insults burned in his ears, and his heart boiled with anger. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David's words came out with a force that shocked those around him. He was just a boy, untested in battle, yet something fierce stirred within him. While the entire army cowered in fear, David's faith ignited a flame of righteous fury. How could anyone stand by while this enemy defied not only Israel, but the very God who had delivered them from slavery in Egypt? In that moment, David saw not just a giant, but a challenge that needed to be faced, one that could not be ignored. His confidence wasn't born from strength or experience, but from his unwavering belief that God was with him. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. David's confidence was striking, especially considering his youth and inexperience in battle. While the seasoned soldiers of Israel stood paralyzed with fear, David spoke with a certainty that seemed almost impossible. As he overheard the whispers of doubt, he stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear will deliver me from this Philistine," he declared. His words weren't just a statement of belief, they were a proclamation of faith in the power of God. David wasn't boasting of his own strength or skill. He was reminding everyone that his victories, even as a humble shepherd, had never been about his own ability to fight wild animals. It had always been about God's protection. In the fields, alone with his sheep, David had faced predators, lions and bears that threatened his flock. But with God's help, he had triumphed. He knew that the same God who had empowered him to protect his sheep would be there with him now, facing a far greater foe. To the men around him, his confidence might have seemed naive or even reckless. But David wasn't relying on human strength. He knew that when God was on his side, the odds didn't matter. With the fiery passion of his belief, David stepped forward, ready to take on the giant who dared to mock the God of Israel. The moment of the battle was nothing short of surreal. Goliath, towering over David like an immovable force, scoffed at the sight of the young shepherd. With a cruel laugh, he mocked David, his words dripping with disdain. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he sneered, confident that this would be an easy victory. The mighty giant, armed with sword, spear, and armor, couldn't fathom that a mere boy, with no weapon but a sling and a stone, would dare challenge him. But David, undeterred by the giant's mocking, stood his ground. His faith was unwavering. With a calm resolve, he declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel." His words carried the weight of his belief, a belief that transcended the physical realm. For David, this was not just a fight for survival, it was a battle for God's honor. With that, David took a smooth stone from his pouch and placed it in his sling. With a single practiced motion, he sent the stone flying. The air seemed to still as it hurtled through the sky, striking Goliath in the forehead with a force that shattered the silence. The giant, so confident just moments before, staggered, then crumpled to the ground, dead. In that instant, the battlefield shifted. David's victory wasn't just a physical one, it was a spiritual triumph. The mighty Goliath, who had seemed invincible, lay defeated by a simple boy armed with faith, proving that when God is on your side, no enemy is too great. With Goliath's lifeless body lying on the ground, the atmosphere on the battlefield shifted dramatically. The silence that had once been filled with fear and uncertainty was now replaced with a roar of triumph. The Israelites, who had cowered in the shadow of the giant, now found their courage renewed. The defeat of Goliath sparked an immediate change in their hearts, and they saw the hand of God in this miraculous victory. What had seemed impossible moments ago was now a reality, and the Philistine army, shaken to its core, began to flee. Seeing their champion fall, the Philistines' resolve crumbled. The mighty warriors who had once stood proudly now turned and retreated, their morale shattered. The Israelites, fueled by the strength that only faith in God can provide, gave chase, pursuing the fleeing enemy with relentless determination. The sound of their footsteps was like thunder as they followed the retreating Philistines across the field. It wasn't just a victory, it was a rout. The Israelites overwhelmed the retreating Philistines, plundering their camp and seizing their weapons and supplies. The victory wasn't only in the death of Goliath, it was in the destruction of an entire army that had dared to challenge the power of Israel's God. As the Israelites pressed forward, they killed many Philistine soldiers along the way, further solidifying the message that God was with them. The Philistines, once confident in their strength, were now scattered and broken, their defeat echoing through the land. The battle was won, and the power of Israel's God had been unmistakably demonstrated. Even with Goliath's death, the threat of the Philistines was far from over. Goliath had not been the only giant among them. The Bible tells us that he had 4 brothers, each as formidable as he was, and they sought to avenge his fall. After the great victory over Goliath, the Israelites faced new challenges, battles with these remaining giants who were just as eager to prove their strength. One of Goliath's brothers, Ishbi-Benob, was a formidable warrior wielding a spear that weighed a staggering 300 shekels, a true giant in his own right. He sought to strike fear into the hearts of the Israelites by confronting David. But just as Goliath had underestimated David, so did Ishbi-Benob. David, though weary from his earlier victory, stood firm, ready to face the threat. However, it was his men who came to his aid. Abishai, David's loyal nephew, intervened at a critical moment, delivering a fatal blow to Ishbi-Benob and saving David's life. But the battles didn't end there. Another of Goliath's brothers, Lami, was also defeated by David's warriors, each victory echoing the triumph over